The Bonnies return to the RC after a week in Charleston, but Northern Iowa spoils their return in a surprising upset. With the team still under the national scope, we analyze the Bonnies' projected NCAA tournament seed as they are bumped from the AP rankings for the first time this season. And the women continue to pile up wins early in the season. We discuss their early success leading up to conference play. It's time for BBN.
Zone gets set up. It's Harris, a quick three, and she hits it.
Welcome back to BBN. Today I'm joined by SBU-TV sports reporter Anthony Goss and, as always, the Olean Times-Herald JP Butler. This past weekend, the Bonnies returned home to the Riley Center for a matchup against Northern Iowa following their victory in the Charleston Classic. Right to the hardwood with the Saturday afternoon shocker, the Bonnies taking on the 1-3 Northern Iowa Panthers. The Bonnies have gone through some tough shooting stretches early on in games this season. This one was no different. The Bonnies missed their first 4 scoring opportunities.
Yeah, you're not going to make every shot, but especially early in this game, the Bonnies definitely wanted some of these shots to go in.
Still, the Bonnies held a solid 20-16 lead with impressive play from Kyle Lofton and Jalen Attaway. They scored 16 of the Bonnies' first 20. Kyle would finish this game with 21 points and 7 assists.
Yeah, both guys were great offensively. The whole starting 5 really was good offensively, but offense wasn't the problem. It was the defense this time around and the inability to stop A.J. Green.
10 minutes left in the first half. The Bonnies kept pace with the Panthers, but watch out. In the final 5 minutes, the Panthers turned up their offense, going on a 19-4 run, as more shooting troubles and poor defensive play marred the Bonnies.
Yeah, again, a poor start for the Bonnies in the first half, and they've been able to get away with it through the first couple games of the season, but that wasn't the case on Saturday.
The Bonnies trailed by 13 at the half and more of the same in the second. The Bonnies rolled over early as they once again faced shooting issues. However, their experience and leadership proved impactful with fast scoring. In crunch time, Bonaventure fought back to tie up the game at 62.
Yeah, just another flip of the switch. That's what this team has been doing in the second half. All of a sudden, boom, within a 6-minute stretch, a 26-7 run to get back into the game. The question has been, where is this at other points of the game?
But it didn't take long for the Panthers to get back on track and pull away. Let's put a spotlight on A.J. Green. His 35 points and a red-hot second half from Nate Hasey were fatal, a combination.
Yeah, the Northern Iowa Panthers are a good shooting team, but again, it was the shooting of A.J. Green today. He was just lights out from 3, and the Bonnies didn't have an answer.
This would lead to a 90-80 final and the Bonnies' first loss of the season. Looking at the positives from the performance, senior Dom Welch put up 20 points and 7 rebounds and adding an assist, his best performance of the season so far.
Yeah, he really was the reason that they had a chance in the second half with the comeback. Has 17 of those 20 in the second half, tied his career high with 6 3-pointers. So even though it came in a loss, the hope now is that he at least starts to get going from this performance.
The Bonnies definitely want to rebound against Coppin State Wednesday night.
It's definitely not the result that the Bonnies and their fans wanted, but Northern Iowa is a good team in their own right. I mean, A.J. Green has been a force in the Missouri Valley for a few years now, and this, again, it's not the type of game that the Bonnies are going to be successful in. They want to play a game that they can dictate the pace, 60s, 70s, maybe even in the 50s. This was a really high-scoring game, 80s and 90s, as we saw in the final score. But again, it's not where the Bonnies are successful. They need to keep it where they can dictate, and Coach Schmidt can run his sets and they can play their defense.
Yeah, Northern Iowa, they were a team that was viewed as also one of the top mid-majors in the country coming in. They were a top 100 team in the KenPom to start the year. They've got a rich history. They've had a ton of success with this Ben Jacobson over the last several years. They've made 4 NCAA tournaments since 2009. And they too came in with a veteran experienced team. They had all 5 starters back as well that knew how to handle themselves. We've seen that with this Bonner team, but this team too knew how to handle itself at the end of the game.
And then JP, with that Bonnies loss to UNI, they fall out of the rankings for the first time this season. So break it down for us.
They did. That was, the big question, coming out of this one was, okay, what's going to happen with that national ranking now? Was that one loss enough? Obviously we saw they fall from number 16 to just out at number 27. And to me, there's 2 ways to look at it. The voters see a number 16 team lose to a mid-major that was 1-3 coming in at home. That's enough to say, we're going to drop them. People who maybe took a little closer look at that game, it wasn't quite that. This was a Bonner team that lost to a veteran team that's probably better than their record suggests, and one guy who just went absolutely crazy.
You think they got it right, JP?
I don't think so. This team, to me, is more and will be going forward what we saw on Saturday than the start they'd gotten off to at 1-3. This AJ Green kid's the real deal. I would be stunned if they're not in the mix for that Missouri Conference title at the end. Losing at home to that team, yes, not great, but that's not a terrible loss. And so you look at, an Alabama loses to an unranked MAC team. Granted, Iona's good, but still, they go from 10 to 16. It would have been more reasonable for this Bonnet team to go from 16 to say 23, 24, 25, especially after what they just recently accomplished in Charleston.
I see the Bonnies have a couple of games this week, so come Monday, do you think they have enough, if they win both those games, to get back into the ranking?
Yeah, so that's the next thing now. What do they have to do to get back in? They've got 3 more home games in a row to kind of right the ship before they go to UConn. If you win all 3, Coppin State, Loyola, UB, none of those are games where you're going to necessarily individually move the needle, but collectively, if you get all 3 and a couple of teams in front of you lose, I would think that would be enough to get back in, to maybe make that UConn game again a matchup of ranked teams. But if that didn't do it, then certainly beating UConn on a neutral floor would not only get them back in, but probably into the top 20 again.
And Coach Schmidt had more to say on his team on Wednesday as he was a guest on the highly rated Jim Rohn Show. Take a listen to what Schmidt had to say last week about how his team turned the page during the Charleston Classic tournament, courtesy of CBS Radio and SiriusXM.
You went to the Charleston Classic last week. You beat Boise State. I mean, how special of a run was that for you personally and for the program?
I've been here 15 years and, never would have thought that we would have been invited to such a prestigious tournament. And for us to be able to come out of there with a championship is really a credit to our players, the way they played, the way they were able to turn the page and go on to the next game. And it was great for our university, and, being on ESPN is terrific for us.
We are now over a month into the season, and already Joe Lunardi released a new bracketology report that predicts what section each team will play in and what seed they will be in the NCAA tournament in March. Lunardi gave the Bonnies a 4 seed in this edition, facing off against 13-seeded New Mexico State in Portland, Oregon. Now, JP, we're still so early in the season, but how did the Bonnies' Charleston tournament win play into this ranking, and where do you think they would be now with that loss to UNI?
So the Charleston, title put them in a dream scenario, right, where if we're talking about a team that's a 4 or 5 seed and maybe playing in Buffalo, what that would mean toward the end of the year. Okay, now after the Northern Iowa loss, they're not going to necessarily be viewed in that same light. That's fine. There's so much season to go. It's Thanksgiving. I don't think that loss was the worst thing in the world. We knew that there were probably going to be a couple of slip-ups along the way. To me, this is a team that still has everything in front of them to accomplish. They checked the bigger box. It was more important to me that they won those 3 games in Charleston than losing to Northern Iowa at home. So you got the big one out of the way. You still have games against UConn and Virginia Tech, things that happen in conference play. Everything's still right there.
Coming up, the women's team has started out the season on a tear. Just how much have they improved since last season? We talk about it next when BBN returns. And from our family to yours, we hope you had a safe and happy Thanksgiving. You're watching BBN.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back. Dad! You probably don't remember what you told me.
That was perfect.
But I heard every word.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Welcome back to BBN. The Bonner women hosted Clarion Sunday at noon, with Tori Harris leading with 16 points and Ayanna Lopes leading in rebounding. They lead the Bonnies to an 81-49 win over the Golden Eagles.
So here we're looking at two different plays on the right from last year's A-10 tournament game against Davidson, and on the left here just from Sunday's game against Clarion. And what we're going to see here is the growth. This is a team that started off last year at 1-6 and almost the opposite this year at 5-1. What have you seen?
Well, yeah, JP, I mean, there's a big difference in the win column this year. Now, Clarion isn't really the litmus test for this team, but what you're seeing here is growth. So now from the beginning here, the Bonnies have been a good defense and rebounding team this year. Now you're going to see the shot go up, they're going to box out, get the rebound. Okay, stop it here. So with the Bonnies, it's been an issue of getting into their offense, setting up their sets. But if you have a problem setting up your offense, the best way to fix that is getting in a transition. So press play, here we go. So Asiane is going to get the ball right here, and before the defense even gets to set up, she finds Tori for a three. Now that's a great play here, but what you saw last year is when they're coming down the floor, they're waiting for the defense to set up. If your star players like Tori and Asiane are showing that growth offensively, you know, the Bonnies have a chance to kind of move the needle in the A-10. You know, we see them doing well in these non-conference games. These aren't really, you know, the world-beating teams that you could see elsewhere. But again, there is improvement here, and there is a sign of growth for Jessie Fleming's squad so far.
You said it, you know, a year older to me, a year more experienced, better decision-making. Overall, they're a bit more used to it this year, and now you're starting to see that improved play from the Asiane Johnsons and the Tori Harrises. And much like the men's team, if the women's players can, if their best players can play at a little bit higher level, more consistently, provide a little more scoring, then I think this is a team that could also make, you know, that much more of a legitimate jump in the A-10 this year.
And then JP, so the Bonnies men, they obviously play Coppin State on Wednesday. Do you think they have to blow them out for the committee to kind of look at that as a valid win in their resume?
I don't know if that to blow them out. I mean, it is one of the lower ranked teams on their schedule, so you would think that's going to be the expectation anyway. I do think it'll be a get-right game for them. This is a team historically that has bounced back well in these situations under Schmidt.
And then Anthony, the Bonnies have kind of gotten off to slow starts, and they kind of flipped that switch. What do they have to do to kind of keep that switch on throughout the duration of their games?
Well, I mean, they know what it takes to play a full 40 minutes. I mean, the same 5 guys did it a lot last year. You know, maybe it's just a little bit of slow starting, but I think that they know internally what needs to be done. But it's kind of just getting all these, you know, expectations and outside things out of the way and playing a full 40 minutes of basketball.
And then JP, giving up 90 points at home is not a Mark Schmidt defense. Do you think that is just a outlier type of game, or do they have to make some improvements on their defense?
I think it is mostly an outlier due to the effort of one, you know, individual. I mean, that was just a superb effort, but we know that that's not something you're going to see, you know, on a regular basis. I think that the defense is fine. They came into that game number 11 in the country in field goal percentage defense, number 24 in scoring defense. I think that's mostly what it's going to shake out to again this year. Kid was putting in everything.
Prediction Wednesday against Coppin State.
Gotta handle business really in the next 3 home games, as we talked about, and I think they will. Again, they do well in these spots. I'd like to see what their record is coming off a loss under Schmidt. I know it's very good. This is still a team, they're still number 27 in the country. They still are and will continue to be the team to beat in the A-10. There's no question about that. Being more the hunter than the hunted, having that kind of chip on their shoulder from, you know, first loss, and immediately they're kind of brushing you off by dropping you out of the rankings. They've got that chip back, and that's when this team really plays at their best.
Do you think a blowout win's coming on Wednesday? What do you think about the game?
Well, I think that a blowout should be in order. I think it's, like JP said, a get-right game. For me, I'm really looking towards Saturday. I mean, Coppin State, you know, you want to take care of business there. Don't want to overlook the opponent, but Buffalo, they come in, they'll have a chip on their shoulder. You know, the Bonnies have been getting all the Western New York attention. You know, the Buffalo Bulls will have something to say about that on Saturday.
Holiday season means basketball season, and that means we'll be with you, Bonnies fans, every step of the way. So, for myself, Ryan Bolin, Anthony Goss, and the Olean Times Herald's JP Butler, and the rest of the BBN crew, thank you so much for watching Bonnies Basketball Now, and happy holidays.
Zone gets set up. It's Harris, a quick 3, and she hits it.